From Recorded Future News and PRX, this is Click Here. China builds things on a scale that can be hard to wrap your head around. Entire subway systems, high-speed rail, cities that seem to appear almost overnight. Economist Dan Wang has spent years thinking about what makes China so good at this. He's the author of Breakneck, China's Quest to Engineer the Future. And one of the places that helped him understand it was one of China's poorest provinces, which he decided to cross on a bicycle.
One of my tasks that I set myself was to scare up two friends of mine to go on a very long bicycling trip into the southwest of China, into the province of Guizhou, which is really mountainous. It is really poor.
I've been to Guizhou years ago, and it's gorgeous, until you try to get somewhere. The province is carved up by enormous river gorges, so a place that looks close on a map can be hours away by road. That isolation helped keep Guizhou poor. China's answer was to build over it.
So Guizhou has around 50 of the world's tallest bridges. Not China's tallest bridges, but the world's tallest bridges. And this is one of these manifestations of China, which builds these incredible surges of infrastructure, really to try to stimulate economic development, to make life better inside the cities as well as in the countryside.
And by a lot of standards, life did get better. Poverty in Guizhou fell dramatically, not just because of the bridges, but connecting people to the rest of the province helped.
When I was cycling through these really deep gorges and then passing by these super tall bridges, that was one of these elements that made me appreciate that this is really core to China's governing system, in which they really try to build their way out of a lot of different problems.
From Recorded Future News and PRX, this is Click Here, a show about the people making and breaking our digital world. I'm Dina Temple-Raston. Dan Wang has a theory about why China builds the way it does. Basically, he thinks it comes down to who's in charge. In China, it's engineers. In America, it's lawyers. And it sounds almost too neat, but once Dan pointed that out, I started seeing the comparison everywhere.
There's a lot of people who believe that if you build just another bridge for the people, or if you build another high-speed rail line, then the people will be really happy.
Stay with us. Those bridges in Guizhou are an extreme example, but Dan says you can see it all over China. Think about Shanghai. In the 1990s, you basically watched a new city get built all around you.
Today, Shanghai has these big gleaming malls, really extensive subway lines. It is one of the most extensive subway systems in the world. It has these bridges that connect the eastern side of the city with the western side of the city, and it is just really, really well built up.
Shanghai and Guizhou couldn't be more different, but the answer was the same: build. And when you do that at an enormous scale for decades, the country starts changing very quickly.
I think the really deep point to try to appreciate with China is that for something like the last 30 years, its GDP growth averaged about 10% over 30 years. You're essentially living in a different country every 7 to 8 years, and that is one of these things that a lot of Chinese have been able to experience.
For comparison, the U.S. averaged about 2.5% annual GDP growth over the same period. But the growth alone doesn't explain China's obsession with building. For that, Dan says, look at who's running the country.
If we take a look at China's leadership, this really peaked in the year 2002, when every single member of the standing committee, all 9 of them, were trained as engineers. The top guy, Hu Jintao, then was trained as a hydraulic engineer. His deputy, the premier, was trained as a geologist. The current top leader, Xi Jinping, had his undergraduate degree in chemical engineering. And I think what that manifests is that you have a governing system that treats building another mega project as the solution to a lot of economic challenges, the solution to a lot of political challenges. There's a lot of people who believe that if you build just another bridge for the people, or if you build another high-speed rail line, then the people will be really happy.
And sometimes that engineering mindset was applied to things that were a lot more complicated than bridges, like people. In the 1970s, Chinese scientists used computer models to calculate how big the population should be. It eventually told most families that they could just have one child. But people aren't bridges. They don't always behave the way you expect them to. China is still dealing with the consequences of that today, an aging population and not enough young people. And this is where Dan's engineers versus lawyers idea gets more complicated. I felt like one of the best apples to apples comparisons that you made about the difference between those two societies, one run by engineers, one run by lawyers, has to do with actually train travel. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I love trains, and trains love me back. And unfortunately, there are two train systems I find that I'm unable to love. The first is the Amtrak system that I've taken plenty of, and the second is the California high-speed rail system. So the year 2008 was a pretty important year for high-speed rail, both in California as well as in China. So in the year 2008, the California voters approved a referendum to build high-speed rail from San Francisco in northern central California down to LA in southern California. In the year 2008, China actually started construction of its high-speed rail line connecting its two biggest cities, Beijing in the north and Shanghai in the east. And coincidentally, Beijing to Shanghai is about the same length as San Francisco to Los Angeles. But that's kind of the only thing that these two systems have in similar. So 3 years afterwards, China actually opened the Beijing-Shanghai high-speed rail line.
High-speed rail. They unveiled a new system today. Beijing to Shanghai, 800 miles in about 5 hours, less time than it takes to fly New York to LA. For China, high-speed...
Now, how many billions of passenger trips has San Francisco, Los Angeles delivered? We are now nearly 2 decades after voters approved the referendum to build these train lines. And how many of us have actually been on this train system? The answer is 0, because, I think the state government has said that the soonest that this line might open is somewhere in the middle of the 2030s. And so right now, the cost of the system is looking like it's going to be about $130 billion. That's about 3 times the cost of China's system.
3 years versus potentially 3 decades. It's hard to hear that comparison and not think, okay, engineers win. But Dan's whole argument is that you pay a price for both systems. Right. And so there's this incredible efficiency in China, clearly. But when you treat a society like something to optimize, what do you think gets lost?
My view is that China may be able to build these really tall bridges, really wonderful, well-functioning subway lines and high-speed rail lines. But the Chinese system isn't able to really produce a program of human flourishing that makes a lot of people happy. They are able to build a lot of infrastructure, but they don't really produce much human happiness.
China's system is very good at getting people moving in the same direction. But what if the next great idea requires someone to go the other way? That's after the break. Stay with us. There's another problem with getting everyone moving in the same direction. The person with the next great idea may want to go somewhere else, which made me wonder about something else. Where do entrepreneurs fit into all of this? Yeah. And there's also this idea of creativity that I wanted to explore with you. I was a White House correspondent in the Clinton administration, and there was always this undercurrent of optimism there that whatever problem the U.S. had, some entrepreneur would invent a way out of it. Do you think that optimism exists in China? And does it still exist here?
Yeah, well, I wonder if you were still a correspondent in the Obama era. I think at the start of the Obama era, that still felt like it was kind of true. Someone like
Hmm.
President Obama would visit a company like Facebook and shake hands with Mark Zuckerberg. But I don't think that the Communist Party really counts on the entrepreneurs really to solve its problems.
China does have plenty of entrepreneurs, and Dan says the Chinese Communist Party knows it needs them.
I think that there are clear cases in which the Communist Party has understood that without the entrepreneurs, without the factory owners, without the just the really dynamic business people that are in China, then the governing system would be even weaker than it is today.
But needing entrepreneurs and being comfortable with them are two different things.
At the same time, the Communist Party fears a lot of the entrepreneurs. There was a period in which the Communist Party really tried to fold in the entrepreneurial class into the system, but I think that period has soured, and that there is once more this assertion of party life into the corporates and as well as the entrepreneurial class, as well as the startups, that's going to make it much more difficult for China to sustain lasting economic advantage over the longer run.
Yeah, I guess I wonder if the system, as efficient as it is, kind of quashes the desire to invent the next big thing, because maybe inventing the next big thing seems too individualistic. Do you think that's the case?
I think you put your finger on a pretty important word, which is efficient. And I think that, I often believe that China is just a little bit too efficient for its own good, that there is just insufficient debate inside the system for whether it should pursue something like the zero COVID program.
Zero COVID was China's attempt to keep the number of COVID cases during the pandemic as close to zero as possible. So the government threw the machinery of the state at it. Mass testing, quarantines, entire cities on lockdown.
But the system is a little bit too good at keeping people quarantined indoors for up to months at a time. I was living in Shanghai in 2022, which suffered what I would describe as the greatest lockdown ever attempted in the history of humanity, in which about 25 million people were unable to step foot outside of their doors in the spring of 2022. And so, I think that sometimes this efficiency with the government can lead to really great projects, but often the political system, which is opaque, jealous of rival sources of authority, can really quash a lot of entrepreneurial dynamism, a lot of entrepreneurial spirit, and I think that can be a pretty big deficiency with the regime.
And here's where China gets a little hard to explain. Because for a system that can quash entrepreneurial spirit, there's still an awful lot of innovation. Chinese scientists now produce some of the world's most cited research. Chinese biotech companies now account for nearly a third of new drug candidates worldwide. So if we think of China as continuing on this path, run by engineers, building at this breakneck pace, see what I did there?
Yes.
With this level of coordination, what do you think that means for the rest of us?
My hypothesis and my view is that China will not displace the United States as the global superpower, because the United States is not just a financial superpower. It is also a cultural superpower. It is also a diplomatic superpower, and these are all things that I think that China, Beijing, will struggle to recreate. But there's one thing that engineers are really good at doing, which is building more. And I think that China will be more of a technological superpower than it is today. Chinese are building electric vehicles. China's building a lot of the solar and batteries. China's building all sorts of pretty sophisticated electronics. If China continues to build at this pace and America has no answer, I think that is actually going to be a pretty big challenge for Washington, D.C. to really try to manage.
That's Dan Wang. His new book is Breakneck, China's Quest to Engineer the Future. And I keep thinking about those bridges in Guizhou, one of China's poorest provinces, 50 of the tallest bridges in the world. You can look at that and see a government spending too much money. or a government solving a problem. Dan would probably tell you both things can be true, but either way, the instinct is the same. Build something. This is Click Here. Click Here is a production of Recorded Future News and PRX. Today's show was written and produced by Megan Dietrich, Sean Powers, Erica Gutta, Zach Hirsch, and Maya Fawaz. It was edited by Karen Duffin and Sarah Cavedo and fact-checked by Darren Ankrum. Original music is by Ben Livingston with additional music from Blue Dot Sessions. Our staff writer is Lucas Riley, our illustrator is Megan Goff, and our sound designers and engineers are Jake Cook and Jesse Neiswanger. I'm Dina Temple-Raston, and thanks for listening.